Hello class. This video is designed to introduce you to the lab setup for our dissection unit, as well as some safety procedures and tools that you're going to be using throughout our unit. What you see here is the setup that you will be finding at your lab table, with a couple of things spread out, so it will not be exactly like this. You'll see some of these things that are set up for you each day, and some of the things that you will find throughout the lab that you'll be needing as we work through this particular unit. I'm going to break this up into a couple of segments. We have the general space that you see in front of you. We'll look at some protective items, and then we'll look a little more closely at the tools that you'll have to work with as you're working with your specimen. So to begin, you'll have a lab tray. It will be set out, and you will have your lab tools and a beaker like so. This is for ease of setup as well as ease of cleaning, so that we can get quickly into dissecting and then clean up quickly for later classes to come in. Additionally, you will see that the protective devices that we have, protective equipment that we have, is all included here. A couple of things that you are going to need to have on in order to protect yourself, either skin, eyes, or clothing throughout any of the time that you are dissecting. First of all, you're going to have a lab apron. These are plastic lab aprons. They tie around, loop around the neck and tie around the waist. And that will be important for you to protect your clothing. Additionally, we have gloves. We have switched to the Nitrile Gloves. These are a little more expensive, so as you're going, please be attentive to how many you are using. You should be able to work through class with just one pair, but if you do need to remove them, try to save if you can. If not, minimize the amount of time you're doing that. Additionally, for eye protection, we do have the glasses. These are going to be important as you are working through the unit with a specimen. It is not uncommon for fluids or things to be flipped around, so we want to make sure that the eyes are protected. So make sure that you have those on as well. Additionally, for those that have longer hair, I will have hair ties available. Make sure that you pull that up as you're leaning over a specimen. It will just keep your hair out of the way. So those are some protective items that you should be utilizing throughout our unit. Additionally, we also have a miscellaneous item. This is often generic for Vicks Vapor Rub. It is something that you can use for those that are not accustomed to the smell or do not find the smell of the specimen or the preservatives to be appealing. A small amount of this rubbed underneath the nose and above your lip will help to alleviate some of that concern. All right, zoom in now, and we'll take a quick look at some of your items that you're going to be using. Some of the tools that we'll be using throughout the unit. As mentioned, you will have them all set up here. Anything that you do get out and use will need to be cleaned. So as you're assessing your specimen and what you need to do for the day, try and figure out what you need, and the more that you use, the more that you're going to have to clean. So when you're done, you'll put them back in there so that we can clean up and allow time for the next class to join us. All right, tools that we have. We will have a scalpel. This is a good tool. However, keep in mind that the blades are surgical grade. They're very sharp, and they're replaced before each unit. So as you are using those, be aware that they are very sharp. They do cut through tissues very easily. Historically, I have had a number of students that do tend to get scalpel happy and use these a little bit too much. Be aware that once you cut through a tissue, unfortunately we cannot put it back together, and if it is not a bilateral tissue, meaning in one of the limbs, you won't have another one to work on. So be gentle with those, especially throughout our cat dissection unit. With skinning, they're good to start with, but then moving away from them may be a good idea. Oftentimes you can use it by flipping it over and not using the sharp edge, but using the tip and the back edge. This will allow you to scrape and not have to worry about cutting so deeply into a particular tissue. If for some reason you do have a blade break throughout the unit, please let me know. I have plenty of replacements, and we can get that switched out for you. Don't try to replace the blade on your own. It does take a little bit of finesse. It's not difficult, but there is a chance of cutting yourself. So I want to make sure that that doesn't happen. Quick note on sharp devices, and you see that there are a number of sharp items on this table and that you'll be using. The best way to hand these or pass them to another student is to hand them, flip it over and hand it handle first. This way, somebody that's grabbing may be distracted or not paying attention. They will not have any risk of cutting themselves. Also, when you hand it, you want to make sure that the sharp edge is away from them, so if they pull it, it doesn't cut you. Ultimately, the best way to hand any sharp device to somebody else is to set it down for them and allow them to pick it up. That way, there's no concern of possible injury. Other things that you'll find in your beaker of tools will be a pair of forceps. This will be useful for pulling away fascias, connective tissues, or fat tissue, or even separating or holding on to and being able to pull specific muscles for identification. You'll also have a pair of scissors. These are good for cutting through a variety of tissues, and very useful when skinning the cat when we're working through our dissection or cat dissection. Also be a probe. This is helpful for areas where you need to separate tissues but don't want to cut. It is also good for pointing, showing things to other students, and I use that frequently to help students identify things. Additionally, you have what looks like a spear. This is somewhat sharp, has a sharp tip. It is sharp on the edges. It is not as sharp as the scalpel, but it can be used to cut through some tissues and is much more useful. I find this to be one of my favorite tools to use as I'm working with students. It's good for pointing, good for identification, and good for not overdoing your cutting or what you're working with. Finally, we have in your beaker, you will have a pointer. These are good for identification. Beyond that, you'll find that they are somewhat flimsy. They're not real great for actually utilizing for working through any particular tissues. So this one is used more through practical times where you will be tested or have to identify things, and I need to show a particular item or identify a particular item. The other tool that you will have, this is not going to be available in all of your beakers. So as we get there, these are bone cutters. These are for usually used mostly through our cat dissection unit when we are getting to thoracic cavity and cutting through or breaking the ribs or the sternum. So as we get there, there are a number of pairs that will be available, and as we get to that point, those will be passed around as you get to that, get through that particular pond. So this is what you'll see. We'll go through in another video cleaning up and tearing down all of this for another class. Besides that, make sure that you are familiarizing yourselves with these, prior to our dissection unit, as well as when we first start. Try out different tools. Be aware that some are going to work better than others in certain scenarios, but most importantly, make sure that you're using them correctly and safely so that there is no risk of harm. Further videos will explore these, and you'll see how they're used as I go through this video series and as I identify things through dissection. So you'll see, and I'll identify which tools are best for certain areas, and you'll be able to see and play around with them and identify how and what it works best for you as well. Thank you.